Let me start with the All-Star Game. Is there any fallout from how bad that basketball was? Is there anything you could do, or the commissioner or the Players Association are going to say, you know what, let's make this something a little bit more appealing?
I think there will be attempts, Dan, next season to modify the game once again. I think something that's on the table right now is a USA versus the world type of game, which would be kind of the latest, incarnation of what this game has been. I think there's been and there will continue to be conversations about upping the financial incentive to winners of this game. We saw that work to some effect with making the in-season tournaments a little bit more competitive. I think the NBA's going to try that. But when I think of the All-Star Game, Dan, I'm reminded of something that the great Larry Merchant, who covered boxing so many years for HBO, once said about boxing, and that's you can't save it and you can't kill it. And that's kind of how I feel about the All-Star Game. I don't think it's going to get appreciably better because today's NBA players simply don't care about it. And it's never going to go away because regardless of what people like you and me think about it, it's still going to draw between 5 and 7 million viewers every single year, which would be the equivalent of the highest rated regular season game that the NBA has.
I suggested yesterday, just offhand, how about the first team to 200? So there is some kind of incentive, or that, you get to 200, you win the game.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of similar to what they did with the Elam ending, right? Where they, put a score up there and said, whoever gets that score first wins, which is great at the end of games, but doesn't do a heck of a lot making it more interesting in the very beginning. I think what made this past All-Star Game so much worse is that in years past, it's been that bad. It hasn't been 200 points for one team, record scoring bad, but it's been a bad game. It's been salvaged to a certain degree by the fact that the last few minutes were competitive, that you had guys for at least 5 minutes during that game competing like it was an actual game. This game didn't have that because it was out of hand, really by the start of the second half, and there was no competitive fourth quarter. So all the NBA can hope for, I think, moving forward is that the game stays close enough that we get some of those moments down the stretch where we had, a year ago when it was Jason Tatum versus Jaylen Brown, who are on opposite teams. Maybe you get Luka, versus Giannis on opposite teams. I think that's the best the NBA can hope for at the All-Star Game.
And I would love, the rest of the world versus the United States. But let's say I did that this year. Who are you taking? If I give you the world, or you take the players from the United States?
I don't know, Dan. Like, one of the conversations I've had with league people about that is, while there's a natural inclination to believe that would make the game more competitive, right? Like if you're competing for your country and you're competing for the world, It has sort of an Olympic style vibe to it. The problem is the two guys that were the most indifferent to the All-Star Game were Nikola Jokic and Luka Doncic. Like, they could not have cared less about the outcome of that game. Jokic was just there trying to do windmills at the end. Luka took a 75-footer in the second quarter. He went for a 2-for-1 at the end of the second quarter from 75 feet away. These are not guys that are acting serious about that game. And I'm not criticizing them for it. If I'm Luka and I'm Jokic and I just want to relax over All-Star Weekend, that's kind of how I would treat it. But I don't think getting, the best of Europe and Asia together on one team is going to suddenly get the motivational and competitive juices of Luka and Nikola Jokic.
Yeah, but it can't hurt. Okay, so I think you have to look at these and say, all right, I think that they would play harder because it's us against the NBA, the United States. So you would get Canada, and then you would get the rest of the world, and I would take the rest of the world versus players from born in America.
Yeah, in a vacuum, yes, I would probably do that. And I think it could create some interesting storylines going into the game and some fun narratives. But Dan, I've never known you to be this kind of wide-eyed optimist to think that it would suddenly make these guys care about the outcome of the game. I think the only thing that would make these guys care is if, like, some gambling outfit came in and offered, $3 million for a player for the winner.
Yeah, but
and even that, I'm not sure.
Fans would hate that. That we have to incentivize you for playing in an all-star game. No,
Yeah, which brings me back to the original point. You can't kill it and you can't save it. It's going to be exactly what it's going to be.